Welcome to this webinar with Searchmetrics and Nils Kattau. Nils has been doing conversion optimization for over 15 years, worked with some of the largest brands in the world, Airbnb, eBay, Facebook. And I think in total he did about 2,000 A/B tests for 300 brands, if I have that correct. And he built one of Germany's largest conversion optimization agencies, and after selling it became a digital nomad, now living in Bali. And today he will show us multiple easy to adapt optimization tactics, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Thanks for having me. All right, should we just start?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Also, I guess everyone can hear us, so you never know. Okay, I'll just share my screen. All right. So yeah, thanks for having me again. So my name is Nils. I'm originally from Germany, but yeah, I left Germany a while ago. So I don't consider myself a digital nomad, by the way, but because I have a home. But however, okay, so today we're talking about things that you can do on your website to increase your conversions. And as Malte already did the introduction, so I will just skip this. Maybe one more thing that I'm kind of proud of. So I'm actually the first university lecturer for Google's digital marketing degree in Europe, which I find really nice. And apart from that, I'm doing different things today. So yeah, I'm not focusing on one project, but I'm actually doing all of the things you can read right now. So just to start, I might just tell you how to optimize a website the right way. So we started, or company in traditional times or in old times did it this way. And sadly, most companies still do it this way. So if you have the time and the success of your website, there's in every industry the line of the best websites of the industry. So let's, for example, take tourism. So let's take booking.com, which is the best website or the most successful website in tourism these days. So they get better and better over time. They don't stagnate. And then what most websites look like, so they have their website and it looks like this, and they're kind of stagnating. Of course, this is a very, very easy display of these data. But however, usually they don't do a lot of things with your website, while the best websites get better and better. And then at some point, you might have the idea, which you can see where the white arrow is pointing, that you have to do a relaunch or that you have to do a redesign. And this happens maybe every year, maybe every 5 years, maybe after 10 years. And the problem with this is if you optimize your website this way, usually you won't have the success of your website or the effect on your website that you get to the websites in your industry. So usually this would be the best case scenario happen. So normally it would look like that your numbers get slightly better or stay the same, or they might even get worse than they were before. And yeah, so you kind of done this. Also, even if it works really well, you still have this part, the opportunity costs, where you don't earn as much money as you could earn if you optimize your website the right way. So how you should do it the right way is called evolutionary website optimization, or actually this is a model by Funnel from Canada, and they call it evolutionary site redesign. So this is a model that they use to explain this. And you have the best websites of your industry, and you should try to move along this line by doing continuous A/B testing, continuous improvement through testing. And yeah, this is usually how you could get a lot of, or much more money than you could earn right now if you're not doing this already. Also, I'm using a lot of memes throughout this presentation. Just to explain quickly what A/B testing is. So I guess most of you will know, but you never know if someone doesn't know it. So very briefly, so you have every person coming to your website, and then on your website, there's an A/B test running. And the A/B testing script, I will show you in a second how to set this up really quickly, but it leads some of the visitors to your original website, which is the original A in this case, and some of your visitors to your variation or to your variations. So you can have multiple variations if you're testing something, and then you always have a goal in the end, and this goal could be the macro conversion on your site, so the big goal of your website, which would be usually the sale or the lead or the sign up or whatever your main goal is. But it could also be a micro conversion if you don't have enough traffic to test for macro conversions. So micro conversions would be things like a person adds a product to the cart, or person visits at least 3 pages, or person doesn't bounce, or whatever. So it can be smaller goals that are placed on the main funnel, so on the way to the main goal. And then in the end, there's a statistical calculation. So if, for example, 6.1% from your original convert to your primary goal for this test, and 7.4 in your variation, then at some point there's a calculation that tells you there's a chance that this variation is better than the original. And a very big misconception that many people have. So if you're kind of used to using A/B testing tools, usually they use a statistical significance of about 90% or 95%. And this doesn't mean that if you have, for example, an uplift of 10%, so you increased your conversion rate by 10%, and your statistical significance is 100%, then it doesn't mean that your uplift has to be 10% all the time. So this 100% statistical significance just tells you the likelihood of being better than the original, no matter how much better. So I hope this is kind of understandable what I mean here. So just to show you really quickly how to set this up. So if you're doing, or if you want to do A/B testing, it's actually super easy if you test simple things. So I will just quickly go to my browser and show you a live example. So if you Google for Google Optimize, for example, this is a testing tool that you can use for free. There are many testing tools out there. You can also use Optimizely, VWO, Adobe Target, and so on and so on. But Google Optimize is free right now, and it's an add-on to Google Analytics. So I kind of recommend using this if you're just starting out with testing, because it's pretty easy to implement, especially now in times of GDPR. If you're already using Google Analytics, this is quite hassle-free. So if you go to the site, of course, first you would have to implement it to your website, but this is also fairly easy. So you're just linking it to analytics. However, I will skip this here, but you can Google for it if you're interested. And then you would just set up your test. So you name the experiments, or just call it Searchmetrics example, because this is the example. Then here you type the URL of the page you want to test, and then you select the type of test that you want to run. A/B test is just comparing one version of a site to another. Multivariate test would mean that you have different areas on your page where you have different combinations that are getting tested, but you need a lot of traffic for this. You could also do a redirect test or a split URL test where you just test one URL against another. And you could also do personalization with this tool. But we will stick to A/B test for now. You just click create. And here you have an overview of your tests. So you can add variants here, which we'll do in a second, but also you can set up your objectives. So as this is linked to Google Analytics, in this case, because it's my installation, so this doesn't actually work for Searchmetrics because I'm not implemented on that site. But usually you could just click here, choose from list, and then you select your objective from Google Analytics that you have set up as a goal. So this is super easy to do. And you could also do some special settings here where you can say how much traffic of my, or how much % of my traffic should get in the test, and so on and so on. So you can do all the settings here. However, adding a variant is very simple. So you click it, you name the variant. Usually you would take a name or choose a name that is understandable, so that later when you see the results, you cannot maybe understand what variant 1, variant 2, and so on means. So you would limit something that is actually describing what you've done in the variation. However, if you do this, so you have your variant here, and then you go to the page editor, which is this button here, and then it opens the website that you've chosen in the first moment. I took this one just for example purposes. And then you can really just click any element here. So you don't need to write a single line of code. You could just, for example, if you want to change the headline, you just click it, then you click on edit element here, say edit text, and you can literally just type anything in here. And yeah, so you don't need to code or write a single line of code. So you can do this with text, do this with images. You can hide elements, you can remove elements. So for example, if you're not happy with this headline, you can just say edit element remove, then it's removed. So pretty easy to use. Then if you're done with this, of course, this is an easy example. There are more complex tests where you're writing code and so on, but just if you want to test text display and maybe images, then you can really do it without coding. Then you click save. And then you get back to the testing tool, which sometimes takes a while. But not here because the internet is fast. And you can then still do something about the audience targeting. So you can say, who do I want to run this test for? So do I just want to test for everyone? Or do I maybe just want to test on specific devices? So you could say, I just want to test for desktop, mobile, or tablet, and so on, and so on, and so on. So just set it up or sign up for the tool and then just click your way through and try to find out what you can do there. But it's really, really easy to use. And then in the end, you just click start up here if it's correctly set up. So right now, as I say, so we're not really implemented on searchmetrics.com, but if you implement it on your website, you can start the test here and that's it. So fairly easy. Back to the presentation. However, you might get in a place where you're like, okay, I will just open the testing tool and I will just try different things and just randomly make changes and see if it works, if it increases my conversion rate or not. But this is actually not the way to go. So as the quote here says, so testing is not for confirming, it's not for finding winning ideas, but it's for confirming them. So you should actually do the work before. The test itself is really just putting everything in the testing tool that you figured out before and then clicking the start button just to see, is this actually making an improvement or not? So the real way or the right way, I would say, to do this is having some kind of framework. This is a framework that I created a while ago when I had my agency. And if you Google for conversion framework, you will find a lot of similar frameworks. So they all kind of look like a circle or like a cycle, and then you have different steps in there. And the reason why you should use something like this is because you will always have some low-hanging fruits in the beginning. So if you want to start optimizing a website that wasn't really optimized before, then you usually will find some easy things that you can fix, and that will increase your conversion rate. But the longer you do it, the harder it gets. And the framework actually helps you getting good success rates in optimization in a long run. So because you will use the knowledge that you get and you will have a big emphasis on analysis and so on and so on. So I would just show you each step very quickly and tell you what it's about. So the first one is the analysis, or the where and what. So where means, on what page in general am I leaking conversions? So where am I losing conversions? And you could use analytics or a usability lab or whatever to find this out. So you would just find out, is it maybe my homepage? Is it my product detail page? Is it my contact form or wherever? Where am I losing visitors? So you would see where people drop out, where they maybe don't spend enough time, where they don't scroll enough, and so on and so on. And then you have the what, which means what element exactly on your page should you touch in the A/B test. So you don't just want to randomly go to a page where you see, okay, I'm losing traffic on my homepage or I'm losing conversions on my homepage. Then you wouldn't just randomly test elements, but you actually want to understand which element might be the cause for losing conversions. And you can use qualitative analysis here, like mouse tracking, eye tracking, getting user feedback, looking in your data, using event tracking, and also, of course, using your experience in psychology, in neuromarketing, and so on and so on. Then all of this should lead or should become a hypothesis. So you should never run a test without writing a hypothesis, because especially if you're working in a team, other people need to understand why you want to optimize this. And it's very important to understand how a hypothesis should look like. So it should not only be something like a green button will increase conversions, because that's actually bullshit. Am I allowed to say bullshit? I guess so.
Sure.
Also, I already did so. So you should actually write something more in there. So as you can see here, I would always write the observed user behavior in there. So what have you seen in your analysis that you did before that makes you want to test this? So this actually forces you to act data-driven, not only from your gut feeling, because your gut feeling might be very wrong. And then also write in there, what do you want to change, but don't make it too specific. So there's always the next step, which we'll see in a second, where you actually create the variations. But in the hypothesis, it's really just about talking about the principle. It could be something like you want to make clearer in your entry area of the page, in your intro area, who the product is, but don't explain exactly how you want to achieve this. And then you would also talk about your audience. So are you only testing for a specific device, or only for specific campaign traffic, or for social traffic, or for everyone? And you would also write your goal in there. So what do you want to measure to, in the end, make sure that your test is a success or not? Next step is the variation. So here it's all about writing or creating the design and copy for your variation. It's pretty important not to be over creative. So many designers actually tend to create variations, or many copywriters as well, where people have to interpret because they use their work as a way to express themselves, to be innovative, to be, to use inspiration to create new things. But many times people don't understand these. So it might be, just too interpretable, and people might not understand what they actually mean. So I wouldn't be too creative. I would really just always try to make it as easy as possible for people. And also, you shouldn't create too many variations, because if you have too many variations, then your test just runs forever, and then you will not get any results, and people will delete their cookies in between, get back to your website, and you will get blurry results, and so on and so on. Also very important, you shouldn't try everything at once, or shouldn't change everything at once, because if, for example, you have a test where you change your headline, hero shot, the hero shot is the main image of your page, the benefits and the testimonials in one variation, and you get 29% uplift, then you might be like, yay, that's a great result. However, if you look in the details, 29% could mean that your headline was actually better, your hero shot was maybe worse, your benefits were better, and your testimonials were way worse. So this could still be okay if you just want to test it on one page, because you're still getting an improvement. But the problem is, if you have multiple pages, which happens to most websites in the world, you would just take these results realistically and just say, okay, we would just adapt them or copy them to other pages that we have. So maybe the principle that you tested in your hero shot and your testimonials isn't there on another subpage. So you would just take these two, put it in your other subpage, and then actually decrease your conversion rate without even noticing, because you wouldn't test it again, because you won't test the same thing over and over again. So you always want to make sure that you can interpret every single change that you make and understand how does it impact the user behavior. So is it positive or negative? Then the technical setup, this is all basically what I showed you a second ago, but just in a very easy way. So you set up what devices do you want to test on, what URLs, who's your audience. You should always exclude people from the test that work in your company or in companies that you work with. So for example, if you have a static IP in your office, then I don't know how many colleagues you have, but maybe you have 100 colleagues or something, then they will constantly go to your website and always get in the test if you don't exclude them from your tests. So you don't want to you don't want to have them mess up your results. So you should always exclude them by IP. And also you should make sure that you exclude people with a cookie from a test that you have already running, because you don't want one person to see two different tests for the same goal on your page. Because otherwise, if you, for example, test something on your homepage and on your product detail page, and the person sees both tests, then you couldn't interpret why does his user behavior change. So was it because of the test on the homepage, or was it because of the product detail page? So you should always make sure that one person only sees one test. Also, quality assurance is super important. So you should, of course, test on different devices. How does it look like? Does everything look fine? How is it with different browsers, and so on and so on? Do you have any display errors or any tracking errors even? And you want to make sure this is all set up well. Then the monitoring happens. So actually you click test, you click start in your testing tool, whichever testing tool it is. And then first you should check if the tracking works. So you should look in the data for a few hours or for a few minutes, see if conversions get into the testing tool, if everything's tracked correctly. And then I would recommend you to not change anything within the first week, because there's a phenomenon or actually a very bad thing where if you start a test, because it's cumulative or accumulated data, so if you have the test here and it starts, then you usually have one variation or two variations that go really, really high up because you just don't have enough data. By the way, the white line is always the baseline, so because it's the original, because it always gets compared by itself, so it's always plus minus 0%. However, the colored here are the variations. If, for example, you have 4 variations, and if you start the test, then it might look like this. So after 3 days running, maybe this orange variation is the best one, and it maybe has plus 300% or something. And then usually what happens, people tend to then make changes to the test already. So they might, in this case, reduce the traffic that gets to the red and the blue variation, still have the green and orange variation running, or even stop the test already because they say, hey, I want to have this plus 300% conversions on my bank account in the end, but it's right to stop it here because the data gets accumulated, and the longer it runs, the more reliable it gets. And at some point, it kind of looks like this. So the lines will run parallel. And this is the first moment where you should actually think about stopping the test or even making changes to variations. Another thing, if you have analytics installed, which I guess most of you will have, or any analytics, doesn't have to be Google Analytics, but the more traffic you have, you will always see this kind of weekly wave in your user behavior. So you have a lot of people maybe coming with in the middle of the week, not so many on the weekend, and so on. So there's always a changing user behavior throughout the different weekdays. And if you would start a test that runs only on these 5 days here, then you wouldn't get the majority or the whole picture of all your traffic on your page in your test. And so you would actually get wrong results, or actually results that are not complete. So you would always have to run your test for at least 1 week. I would even say at least for 2 weeks, so that you have this whole weekly behavior in there and so that it's reliable data. Also, very important, the buying cycle. So if you have someone coming to your page on this first day here, where the first touch point is mentioned, and maybe you were running an ad or you were sending a newsletter or something, and they came to your page, any product, whatever it is, and then the person leaves the page again. You don't know why, but then you maybe retarget them, so they come back to your page through advertisements, and then they still leave the page. So you still don't know what's happening, but at some point, maybe they made the buying decision offline. So maybe they talked to their friends, they talked to their wives, they thought about it or whatever, and then they come back for the sale on this Tuesday that is mentioned there. But if you start a test before this, on this day, then the person would still come to your test when they are about to make the sale, and they would get into one variation that you've set up or in the original, so it would get in the test data, and they would convert. And of course, you as the person running the test would think, oh, this must be because I was running this test, but actually the buying decision was made offline. So you would get false data if you just run the test for a few days here. So you should always have the time to buy, which you can actually see in analytics. So it's the time from the first visit to the first conversion. You want to have this time at least 2 times in your whole test duration. Good thing is, for most websites, the time to buy is like 0 to 2 days. So you can usually just ignore it, because if you want to run your test for 1 or 2 weeks at least, then you actually don't need to pay attention to this. But if your time to buy is longer than this, like 10 days or something, then your test has to run at least 20 days to not have this problem that you're seeing here in this slide. Next part is the documentation, the interpretation. So when your test is done at some point, then you want to document your results. So you should create a PDF or a Word document or wherever you want to write it down, and write the hypothesis in there. So what was the reason for the test? Show comparisons of the original, of the variations. So actually put screenshots in there, screenshot your results. So show the graphs, the numbers that you got from the testing tool, and also write down any special events, any seasonal events. For example, you were starting a TV campaign while your test was running, or there was Christmas, or there was some public holiday or whatever. So you should write these things down just to be able to also, when you look at the data or look at the report in 3 months, in a year, or in 2 years, that you understand what happened here, what made the users behave in this way. Also, very important is that you put in some kind of interpretation. So how can we explain the results? What happened here? Why did user behave in this way? And also, what are the learnings? And for the learnings, I think it's super important to have it as short as possible. So you should really just write bullet points down that just explain what you learned in one sentence, or maybe in 2 sentences, but really not more. Because if you want to work with these reports in the future, so you might want to take a look at what you tested in the past, or maybe you have a new colleague who works with the testing project, then he might take a look at this, and he doesn't want to read a full page of paragraphs just to find out what you learned from this test. So really make it as short as possible. Also, you can use these documentations, these reports, to develop a culture inside your company. So many times, if you want to test your site, if you want to make changes to your site, you're working with many departments, and they are kind of they feel like they are married to their pages or to the pages that they're responsible for, and they don't want to make changes to it, or they don't trust that changing these pages is a good thing. And by developing a culture, so you could, for example, have a quarterly meeting, or a meeting every month or half a year, whatever. So you could actually present your testing results so that people understand that testing actually makes sense and that you're learning things out of this. And this is not only great for making it easier to run tests in your company, but it's also great for educating people. So if you have people working in product management, they might understand, oh, so maybe we should put more emphasis on these product details because they were tested to impact the user behavior in a positive way, and so on. Last step of this, before we get to the more practical part, is the implementation. So you should implement extremely fast. So as soon as your test is done, you should implement the code from your testing, from your winning variation to your website, because what many people do is that they would just clone the test and then just put 100% of the traffic to the winning variation because it's easier or it's faster, because you don't have to actually implement it to your server-side code. However, this is not very great because, first of all, it slows down your page, and second of all, it might be interpreted as a cloaking or as deceiving by search engines. So that, for example, if Google crawls your page and then every visitor sees something else than the Google bot, then this might be a terrible thing to do, because you might get a penalty or something if you're letting too many people see the variation and not the original. Okay, so far about this. I will have one sip of water. 1 second. Okay, some more practical things. So first of all, how to fail at taking control where people look. What many websites do, or what you see on many websites, is stock photography like this. So you have people there pointing somewhere, and you think that people might follow their eyes or their fingers, but usually what happens in this case, as you might have noticed, you're just looking in the person's face. Especially when there are teeth visible, you will usually look at the teeth much more than at the eyes. So if you use these things, these directional cues, to make people look somewhere, usually what happens is you're not putting prominence or attention to the element that they're pointing at, but you're actually putting prominence to the elements itself. Same thing here, so you will look in his eyes. Same thing here, you will look at the woman in the middle. So it's kind of easy to tell where people look if you use these, and they don't really work. So don't use these, don't use these. This is all, if you use these directional cues, it's all as if you would do something like this. So you're basically putting all attention to the directional element itself. So instead of doing this, you should really make the elements that you want to have prominent themselves prominent. So how to do this? Or maybe to understand how all of this works, it's all about skimming. So when people come to your page and they are doing this quick view, they're maybe scrolling down for a second, then they're scrolling up again, just to get a quick overview of the page, to understand if what they find here is important for them or will help them solve their problems or give them the answer that they're looking for. And this is a moment that takes maybe a few seconds when people come to your page, but it's actually important because people need to understand very, very quickly that your page is the best result or the best page to what they're looking for. Because, I mean, probably they're coming from any search engine or something, and they are really, really quick with clicking the back button of the browser and then just going to the next result. So how can you control this? It's all about visual hierarchy in the end. So you want to make sure that the most important elements on your page are standing out of the hierarchy. A bad example for this is from Sparhandy. It's a company I worked with in the past, and they used to have this this special or seasonal special where they were just putting many elements on the page and they were all competing with each other. So right now you might notice you look at the page, but your eyes are just going anywhere. So you don't really have a focus on your page. You don't know where to look. Is it the button at the top? Is it maybe the images on the left, the buttons on the right? I don't know. So your attention is very, very, very cluttered. And this is not really great for showing visitors where to go. A better example of this is a site that I used to build in the past. And I think this is, although the text or the copy is not perfect, but still the visual hierarchy is pretty nice because people will look at the main headline and at the main call to action or at the main button at first. And this is usually how you want it to be. What you can do to control this, so you can do this by color and contrast. You can do this by irregularities. For example, you see this very often if you have a teaser or something and they have these ribbons in the corner where you have an element, while everything is horizontally and vertically set up, you have something that is diagonal, and this will actually cause people to look there, to cause attention. Also, you can use size. The most common thing where size is used is text. So usually people understand the bigger the copy, the bigger the text or the font size, the more important a text is. So this is why usually the main headline is your biggest text that you have on the website. You can use this do this by shape, and you can also do this by animation or by movement. So I will give you an example about this, how you can use this very, very nicely. So all of this you can use to create a visual hierarchy to make people look in specific areas of your page where you want them to look first. You shouldn't use fingers, arrows, directional cues, or eyes that are looking somewhere, because these, again, only direct attention to themselves. I will make a quick test with you. So unfortunately, I don't see you in front of me right now, but you can just play it with or do the test with yourself. So I will show you two texts for a very, very short amount of time. And you just remember the word that you see. So you will see the text for half a second and then just see what word or what two words are jumping into your eye. So we're starting. That was the first one. And the second one. And so these are the two texts that you've seen. And this is, by the way, a quote of Bob Ross, in case you're interested. And for the first, sorry for the animation, for the first, I guess you've seen something of this. So usually people see anything or anything that. And for the second, you've seen probably something of this line, probably the beginning. And the reason for this is the attention curve that people have when looking at some text. Sorry for the German slide here, but I guess you can all translate this. It's not so hard. So usually the first word that you have in a line of text gets the most attention by far when people are skimming. So when people are just having a very, very quick view on your page. And this means that you should, of course, put your word order following this scheme. So you should put your most important words in the beginning. So don't start your headline with something like welcome to, or have you ever, or we offer, or whatever. So just really form your sentences or your headlines, especially, so that the important words, the keywords, are in the beginning of the text. This also works in the vertical space. So if you have, for example, a bullet list or a paragraph of text, usually the first line gets seen much, much more than the other lines, and the last line also gets a lot of attention. I will do one more test with you, same game as before, just slightly different. So you'll see a text for 500 milliseconds, and I will show you what you've seen, hopefully. Okay, so I guess you've seen one of these things. Usually people see unlimited or painting as a hobby. Some people see mix up a little, which is the same principle that we had in the first example. And the reason for this is that we create contrast by making words bold. Funny thing is, I don't know how long ago, but maybe 10 years ago or something, search engine optimizers were always saying, oh, you need to make your keywords bold so that Google knows they're important. But in the end, what search engines try to do is they try to imitate user behavior or human behavior, and this is actually the reason for it. So if you create contrast by, for example, making a word bold or even highlighting it in any way, then it causes people to see it first and it puts more emphasis on the word. So this works really well. Also, basically everything by just being this dog. So you need to squint your eyes so your vision gets blurry, and then just look at your website and try to see what elements pop out first. And usually if you squint your eyes and your vision is blurry, the elements that pop out first are the elements that are seen in the first moments when people go through your page. You can do this with websites. You can also do this with magazines, with billboard ads, with TV commercials, with shopping windows, and so on. So this works with basically everything. Even if you enter a room and you do this, you can see what element of the room or even what person you would pay attention to first. It's kind of funny if you try. I said this before, so you shouldn't be too creative because, as I said, so designers and copywriters tend to use their work to express themselves, to be super creative. And it's not really what it's about, because in the end, e-commerce is not art, but it's business. And just to show you an example, we will make a quick 5-second test. So you will see this page for 5 seconds. And yeah, so if you've seen it, you probably have no idea what the page is about. At least if I do this in a talk in front of people, usually no one knows really what it is. However, so this is a page. It's a page from an agency. You can tell by the year. It's an old screenshot, to be fair. So they have a new website now, which is still not great, but it's better than this one. But yeah, if people look at this, usually they have no idea what they want. So look at the headline. It's a headline that is super let's say creative. I would say it's bad, and you have really no idea what do they want from me. Same with the image. So is it Lord of the Rings? Is it a sunflower? Is it, I don't know, is it an eye? It's an eye, but you can't really tell. And you don't even know what they offer. So there's one word written in the paragraph. I don't know if my mouse is visible here. It is. So there's a paragraph where it says we are the communications agency. So this is actually what they are. And then they have read more as a call to action. So this is really not the greatest website. And especially your headline. So if you have a headline on your page, which you hopefully have, it has to be very, very to the point. It doesn't have to be interpreted. So people need to understand, what is this page about? How is it good for me? And also your main image should kind of enhance that headline and explain your offer within a second. So if people look at it, then people should understand what you offer, or at least, yeah, I don't know, at least get an idea of it. Of course, it doesn't have to be explained totally, but it would be helpful if people understood a bit of what you're offering, and not like in this example. The same thing goes for usability. So telecom.de is one of my favorite pages for finding bad examples. This is an older example, so they changed it by now. Gladly they did, because they used to have a navigation on mobile where you would have to swipe through horizontally without giving any indication that this is even possible. So people had to find out themselves. Also, we're not really talking about navigation menus right now, but they are kind of suffering from organizational blindness by having menu or main menu items named Magenta 1 or Magenta Service, which is their product names. And people who don't use these products don't really know what this is. So they might not understand what to find behind there. So you should really make it as easy as possible all the time. Short excursion to stock photography. So in case you're using stock photos on your website, you should maybe not use it, or do it if possible, because many times stock photos are just not authentic. So no one would, I don't know, if you get a new client, you don't look like this. You don't throw your whole contract in the air to celebrate, because that would be kind of counterproductive. Also, these images you might have seen on some pages, and it's just not authentic. No one believes you that these are your employees or the people you're working with. And also, if you have something like these operator, telephone support people, it's just not authentic, because first of all, they usually look like models. I'm not saying that your employees are not beautiful, but still, it's just not really real most of the times. And then you have these ethnical, super diverse teams in the background, and it's just no one believes it. So you should really use images that are authentic, that are real. Just take images yourself. And sometimes it's even good to have images that are not that high quality. So don't have the super nicely done studio photos, but actually just have pictures that look real, that look as if you have taken them, just to show, hey, we're a real company, we're real humans, we're not artificial photoshopped Instagram models or whatever. Even if you create your own images, like this company named us, so if you're German, you will understand. So they have images that they've created themselves. However, also they have great headlines. So create the website you want is kind of easy to understand. You kind of understand what the page is about. Get started is an okay call to action. You could still add more elements to this website, but not talking about this right now. But if you have these images, then why would you have this woman there holding a coffee to go on her bicycle? So this actually has nothing to do with the product itself, and it doesn't help people understand what this website is about. However, I mean, I understand why they took this picture. So they just wanted to make sure people understand that it's for everyone, basically. So everyone can create one, even single persons, freelancers, whatever. But yeah, it's still not the greatest picture, I would say, to make the product understandable. A page that does it really well is Square. So because the human brain processes images a lot faster than text. And even if you remove the text from this website, it's still kind of clear what they offer. So it's got something to do with payment, something to do with contactless payment and so on. And yeah, it's pretty easy to understand. And what I would recommend you to do, so just look at your pages and remove all of your copy, or look at your images and find out if they suck. So many times, if you just look at your images, they are not really explanatory. People are not really understanding what your images tell. And many times I worked with companies and they want to make their pages emotional, and then they just use images of people looking somewhere. And this is not emotional. This is just because you have someone smiling doesn't mean that your website is emotional. So you should always combine it, or I don't know, put it together with your product so that people actually understand what you're offering. Also, a very important thing is to transform features into benefits, in case you don't know what I mean. So many times people confuse features with benefits. So if you, for example, I will actually show you an example here. So if you, oh wait, sorry. So first of all, I'm explaining the framework. So you can ask yourself, how is this helping my customer? And now to the example. So if you're, for example, sitting on your chair right now and your chair has an ergonomically designed backrest, so you might think this is actually a benefit, but actually this is a feature which results into benefits. And you can find these out by just asking this question. So you ask, how is the ergonomically designed backrest helping my customer? And this is where you get the first benefit, which would be something like a healthier sitting posture. This is actually a benefit. Then you can continue asking, like, how is a healthier sitting posture helping my customer? And maybe this would result in less back pain, which is also a benefit. And you can continue further. So how is less back pain helping my customer? He might be more agile and so on. So you can ask this question multiple times. At some point, it gets a bit ridiculous. So usually if I give this talk, I'm giving an example of the more agile, the better you are in bed. But I'm not sure if I should give this example here. However, at some point, you're just asking too many questions, and then people lose the connection to your feature. So it should always make sense if you combine these two. So if you have a website and you want to communicate your benefits, then you could always do this in combination with a feature. So you could say something like, have less back pain thanks to our backrest, and so on. Also, if you have a call to action on your website or anything really that people should do, you should write a really good headline for it. And what I like to use here is a framework called What plus Why. And there's actually two important headlines, or two most important headlines on your website, which is, for one's, the main headline that you have. So your H1, your main headline on your page, which should say something like, what is this page about? Why is it good for me? And then you also have the call to action headline, where people need to understand what they should do now and why they should do it. So just to give you, or to read the first example for you, what most people do is something like just saying the what. So what should you do now? Like, download your free ebook now. However, this is good, not really good enough, but it's okay. So the what should be just in super easy to understand tasks. So people should understand what they should do here, but you really make this work, or you make this much, much stronger by adding the why, by adding the reason, which should be something that addresses a personal goal or need and communicates value. So in the first example, you shouldn't just say download your free ebook now, but also say why you should do it, something like and become a better marketer. So what's actually your personal goal that stands behind this? And if you use this framework, this usually leads to much more people clicking your call to action or your button or whatever the interaction element is. If you have this headline, you should also give them reasons to complete it or to follow your call to action. And which I like to use here is the formula called benefit plus proof. So you shouldn't just say the benefits, because people might not believe you. So again, one example, so you could, if you're selling some sales software or some CRM software, you could say something like close more sales with our software, but people might not believe it. So you should always give a proof in combination with it that kind of makes people understand that you're actually able to give them what they want and to fulfill what you're promising. So yeah, you can read the examples yourself, I guess. How to put all of this in your website. So if you have a call to action area or an interaction or conversion area on your page, what I like to do is you have the what and why as a main headline. On top of it, then you have a list of benefits and proofs. You could do 1, 2, or 3. It shouldn't be too long, because at some point people will just not pay that much attention to every of these points. So make it, maybe maximum 5 points or maybe 3. And then if your why or the reason why people should do it is strong enough, you can just use this as your button that you have in the end, so that your button text is not too long, because you don't want to have a button that has like 3 lines of text, because then at some point it just looks like a box that has text in there and not like a clickable element anymore. So yeah, just using the why usually is enough, because people get the connection to the headline where it was explained. In case you just saw that example and you thought, oh my God, that button wasn't orange, because when you're talking about conversion optimization, or you're reading about conversion optimization online, then you see these case studies very, very often. So people say, oh, I changed the button color from green to orange, and now I'm diving in my money and my bank account is full, and so on. But this is actually utter bullshit, because I showed you earlier the example. So you maybe have people who stopped the test too early. They saw numbers too early where they thought, okay, my conversion rate is now plus 300% or plus 100%. I will just stop the test and then this is what I get, but it's actually not. So button testing usually doesn't really work, or it might have a small impact, like 1% or 2% uplift in rare cases, but normally it doesn't do anything, and there's always something more important to test. So don't just test button colors. This is really the lowest level of conversion optimization. However, you can use these principles of testing button colors if you don't have enough contrast or something. So as I showed you before, in the visual hierarchy, your button should always stand out so that people understand where should I click, where should I go next on the page. And you can use it to make people understand what is the goal of this page, or what is the reason why I should do it. So in the example I showed you before with this why, if you have the reason on your button, then it actually makes sense to have the button pop out so that people see it very early. And in this case, button testing can work, but really, don't put too much attention to it, because it's not really helpful. Also, sometimes it's pretty hard to get this third person or the client's point of view when you're looking at your websites. And there are 2 main things that prevent us from seeing through the customer's eye. And one of them is organizational blindness. So you know too much of your website, you know all the technical terms, you know where to find everything, and so on. And the other reason is you've used your website way too often. So you might notice if you're going to your website or even to Facebook or some website, at some point you just don't think anymore, because it's all intuitive, it's all automatically, you just know where to find everything. And you kind of need to get the third person's point of view or the new perspective on your website. And one thing that works really well is just asking your mom, or really any person that has no idea about what you're doing. So you could just call them. Doesn't have to be your parents, can be anyone, but just visit them or call them in Skype or WhatsApp or wherever, and just follow very, very easy steps as soon as they fix their sound. If it's your parents, that might take a while. But yeah, there's a really easy way to go if you want to get this new perspective on your website. So first of all, you shouldn't explain anything to them. Of course, you should tell them what you're about to do to them, but you shouldn't talk about your service or your product before. So it's really best if they have no idea what you're doing or what you're offering or what your product is. Then you should show them your website for 5 to 10 seconds, kind of in the way that I did earlier with the agency's website, with the Eye of Sauron on the right side. And then you take it away, and then you ask the 3 most important questions for conversion rate optimization, which is, what is the page about? How is the offer good for you? And what should you do next? And by asking these questions, you will usually not get the answers that you want to hear. And by getting this feedback, you can optimize your website and try to put more emphasis on answering these questions after 5 to 10 seconds. And I've done this in the past very often, and even with one page we did it extremely, so we really made sure that most people are able to understand all of these things or can answer all of these things after just 10 seconds. And this page was converting extremely. So it was only for free signups. So free signups are, of course, easier to optimize than transactional conversions where people have to pay money. So it was really just typing your email and that's it. However, by doing this, we went from about 20% conversion rate to about 60% conversion rate. So it has a huge impact if you put emphasis on answering these 3 questions. Also, another thing that I like to do, especially if I start optimizing a website, so it's usually one of the low-hanging fruits, and you should use your header white space. So it's usually the first experiment that I do when optimizing a website, because it's really something that goes really fast, and you can, I don't know, I've never seen a test where it didn't put any improvement to the conversion rate. So what you would do is, normally people use their header or the header of their website only for putting the menu there and maybe the logo. However, there's usually a lot of space that is not used. So you could use it to create trust and social proof in the header, or say something about your products or something, so that people, whenever they land on your page, on any subpage, they will quickly understand that they can trust you, that they can, what they can find on your page, maybe how many products you have, and so on. And this really makes a lot of sense because it doesn't impair the reading flow. So if you would put these informations throughout your content of your website, then it sometimes doesn't really match the content or doesn't really fit in the reading flow. And if you have it in your header, then usually people understand it or they see it, but it doesn't impair the reading flow. So it's a nice place to put these things. Some inspiration. What you can say up there is something like about your customer satisfaction. You could say how many clients you have. You can say how many people recommend you. You can show off sales and awards if you got them. And you could also add media logos. So if you had media coverage, like you were on TV or in magazines or in any popular blogs or something, then it makes sense to put these logo next to your logo and say something like "as seen on" or something, and then have these small logos there. And what happens here is that people put the trust that they have in these media. They kind of transfer to your product in a bit or in a way, because they might think that if you're featured on, I don't know, on some TV channel, then you cannot be a scam mailbox company that isn't trustworthy. So this can work really well. However, this is the boring way. So what you should actually do is you should try to find the right benefits or the right things to communicate up there by asking your clients. And one thing that I like to use here is that you use Hotjar. Right now you see my my affiliate link where I get a hoodie and a t-shirt, but I already got these, so you can just go to hotjar.com. And it's a free tool that you can use for mouse tracking, for user playbacks. You can use it for asking questions, for form tracking, and so on. And it's a really nice tool that I strongly recommend basically every time I talk about conversion optimization. And when you have it, it's also free, so you don't have to pay for it. When you have it, you can ask your visitors questions. These are these small questions that pop up in the corner of your page sometimes. And you can ask them what is important when buying the product that you're looking for. I will just give you an example, a real life example that we did with a hotel chain. So we asked the visitors, what is important when booking a hotel? And then it would just be a free text answer, so people could type anything that they wanted. And we got a lot of answers and a lot of different words to say the same things, basically. So what you have to do is you need to cluster it, so you have different buckets. In this case, so it was a hotel chain, so many people would say something about price. So we had the price bucket, which would all be stuff like, I don't want it to be too expensive, I want a good value for money, I don't want to pay too much, and so on. So this would all be the price bucket. And then you would maybe have something about location. So people would say it should be in a central location, it should be close to public transport, it should be close to sites that I can see, and so on. So you have different clusters. And then when you created them, you can ask again, sorry, this should say multiple choice answer, not single choice answer, but you would ask what is most a hotel, and then you would just predefine all the answers from the clusters that you've created. So you would have just an answer saying price, location, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then by doing this, you usually get a nicely prioritized list of things that are important to your visitors, and it's completely customer driven. So there's no gut feeling inside from your side, but it's really just all coming from the clients or from the visitors of your site. And it's one of the best things you can do, and it has a huge impact sometimes. Because these questions appear as an overlay, kind of, I want to talk really briefly about overlays or modal windows or exit intent pop-ups, or however you want to call them. And we've all seen them before. So you come to a page and you're reading the content, and then this thing gets thrown into your face and you're annoyed and you don't like it and you can't read what you came for anymore, but they are asking for your email to send you a newsletter so you get 5% off or something. So it's really, usually it's really annoying. No one really likes these. The problem is, or a good thing or a blessing and a curse is, they kind of work for email addresses. So if you want to build your mailing list, you can use this principle and it will increase the signups for your mailing list compared to just having it in your footer of your page or having it on a sub page or anything. However, what people usually don't track, so if they just track the signups of their emails, they forget tracking the abandonment rate of people seeing these overlays. So what we did for different clients is when they wanted to use these and you test the sign-up rate, but also the abandonment rate, you would usually see that people sign up maybe 20, 30% more, but maybe 5% of your sales are missing because sometimes people are just leaving the site because they're annoyed, or they think they have to click the back button of the browser to close it or something. So they might actually not be able to close it the right way. And this is not only bad for conversions, but it's also a problem for search engines because they get a signal. So imagine you would come to a page from Google and you see these and you click the back button to get rid of it and you get back to Google. So this would be a signal to Google that you kind of bounced on the page really quickly, which you don't really want to. So a way to do this more elegantly is doing something like this. So you have the same page, and if people scroll down, they would just get a slide in. And these slide ins are usually as attention grabbing as the big overlay. However, they don't annoy people. So what happens here is it's kind of evolutionary. It's the reason for it is the reptilian brain, which is part in the human brain that is according to science, I don't know if it's true, but it's like 500 million years old or something. And it's the part of your brain that is there for all the basic stuff, like breathing, like functionality of organs, and also the instinctive behavior and the recognition of dangers. And this is actually the same part of the brain that happens here, or that is active here when you see the slide in. Because imagine you would look at this part of the page and you would read the text, and then something out of your focus appears, then you need to pay attention to what it is. You cannot ignore it. It's the same thing as if you would stand on a street and you're having headphones on, you don't hear anything, and then there's a car coming from the side or something, and you kind of get shocked, or you pay attention just to see what is there, because it might be a danger. Of course, you're not thinking that a website would be a danger for you just by having the slide in. It's just the same part of the brain that is active. So you can use this principle to drag attention extremely by not annoying of everyone. Also, if you have a page or if you have copy on your page, you might have to try to find the right words to convert your visitors, because sometimes you're just thinking about communicating in some way, or you're trying, I don't know, there are different copywriting frameworks where you could, for example, start with the pain points of people, or you start with the solution, and so on and so on. And you might want to test what really helps to make your people convert. And you can, of course, go to just go to some blogs or something like copyblogger.com or something. It's a great resource for finding tips on copywriting. However, they just have tested stuff for other pages or for their own pages, and it doesn't mean that it has to work for you. So you should really try to question what everyone knows about the perfect copy for your page and just test it yourself. And the way to go here is that you could just make simple A/B tests in very, very prominent positions. So for example, test your main headline, or test just parts of your page where there's a lot of attention. And so you can see what are the words that produce the best results, what are the emotional triggers that we can put there. And then you can determine these and try to align more content with those triggers. So for example, if you have a page where there's a headline and you want to try making it more emotional by talking about the pain that people have. So for example, if you have a school or something, or you give lessons to pupils that are not great at school, you could say something like get the best grades, which is a positive communication. Or you could say something like your child will fail at school or something and never get a job, just to make it extreme. And so if you see what converts better, you can try to align more of your content with those triggers. So, and that might actually improve the conversion rate of your copy. And if you've done this, you can always repeat it. So you can really go to the extreme with these tests, because copy is an extreme factor in conversion optimization. I would even say the most important one. Also, if you have low traffic pages, so you might not be able to test this on all of your pages because you don't get enough results. So you could just test or run some ads on Facebook or on AdWords or any advertising platform really, and just test the click-through rate of different wordings of different headlines, and then you will get much more results compared to when you would do it on your website and just always have to get the big conversion. So you could just look at the click-through rate. Also, I'm almost done, by the way, because we're already at 1 hour. Okay. Also, another thing is you should stop using all these burger menus. So usually if you've ever worked with WordPress or with any theme that you can use on any content management platform, they all use burger menus as soon as you go to the mobile viewport. So whenever you're on a mobile screen, your main menu disappears, and then you only have the burger menu. And it looks like this. So this is an example from Zalando. And the problem is, if you want people to interact with your menu, the interaction rate usually on mobile is much lower than on desktop. So you can actually see this easily through event tracking. And the reason for this is that whenever an element or a clickable element is hidden behind an interaction, so I have to click something to see the clickable element, then usually the click rate sinks or is lowered extremely. A very simple principle that you can use to fix this. So if you want people to use your main navigation, not only navigate through your content or your search bar, is something like this. So Booking.com uses this. They have the burger menu up there, but also they have their main items as an instantly visible navigation bar that people can swipe through. And because the last word is not really visible, so it's kind of cut off in the end, so it's very visible that people are able to swipe, and you don't need to do any more explanations. People will usually just understand that they can swipe through this menu. Also, Zappos does this, so they even have a drop-down menu in there. So as you will see in a second in the example, so you can click them and then even scroll down in these menus. So it's pretty easy to use, and the click-through rate on these items is usually much, much higher than if you would just use a burger menu. So try this on your own page. It's pretty easy to implement. And again, if people to use your main navigation. Last part for today, you should really get high on event tracking. So do a lot of event tracking on your page to identify where you can fix your site or where you can improve your site. So the standard analytics setup looks something like this. So for example, if you have an email funnel or a newsletter sign-up funnel, so you can see that people visit your page. You can see how many people submit the form, which is the simple analytics goal tracking. And from this number, you can, of course, understand how many people don't submit your form. And you can also see how many people confirm your email just by the goal tracking. And you can see from this number, or you can calculate how many people don't confirm their email. However, if you look at this number here, so you might have 90% not submitting your form, the easiest way to think, or the normal way how people would think, is there must something be wrong. There must be something wrong on the homepage, on the landing page where people should sign up. However, if you look at this, so right now where the question mark is, will appear now. So if the question mark includes this here, so you would see through event tracking that people, that 50% don't start your form and 50% start your form. This would kind of mean that the landing page actually isn't the problem, but the problem must be somewhere in the form. So you need to look at this data, and you can only find this out through event tracking. And then if you look where the question mark is right now, so of the people who don't submit the form, if you take all of these people, then through event tracking you can see maybe 30% don't even try to submit, so they don't click the button at the end, but try to submit, so they click the form, the button, but they still don't get to the thank you page. That means there must be some error. So you might get event tracking that tells you how many username errors are there, how many password errors, how many existing account errors. So the account was already set up before or something. And then if you go further in detail, so with the password errors, you might see what exact errors are happening. So are the passwords too short? Are there no special characters? Are the passwords too weak? And so on and so on. So by comparing this detail of information on how to optimize your page, here you can really see, okay, this is definitely a problem with the passwords mostly, and so we can fix this easily by explaining more clearly how to write a strong password and so on. If you compare this with the standard analytics setup, this really tells you nothing. So you should really use a lot of event tracking. You can use this or do this very easily by using Google Tag Manager. This is actually how I set up event tracking, and it's pretty easy to use. And if you don't know how this works because you've never done it, or I don't know, you can actually do this without coding again. So you just need to implement the Tag Manager, and then you can find very, very many tutorials online. If you just Google for Google Tag Manager, how to track this and that. And there's a lot of stuff online that you can use. And that is it. And thanks for your time. We're only 6 minutes over time. Okay, and very briefly, so if you're interested in conversion optimization or in what I said, so you can download my PDF. To be fair, that's my mailing list. So on the left side, stuff is, so I'm just giving tips or saying when I'm speaking somewhere or having something online that you can watch to learn more. And I'm very happy if you also follow me on Instagram or Facebook, where you can also send me some feedback if you liked the talk or if there was anything that you didn't like. So that's how you can reach me. And also, if you're interested in more content about Searchmetrics, so they just published a study on Google Shopping in 2019, which you can download for free on their website. The link is also in the chat right now. It is? Okay, it's in the chat right now. And also, if you want to see more webinars just like this one about different topics, you can just go to their page, click on resources in the main navigation, then on webinars, and you can find it there. And that's it from me. And we will look at some questions, I guess.
Yeah, actually, since we are over time already, and I see people have started to leave the webinar, probably to go on their lunch break, I would say we make a cut here and we'll do a follow-up with the questions.
Okay. All right, cool. Then, thanks for your time and have a nice day.
Bye-bye from Berlin.